Hello readers, this is Justin's 52 Books, where I talk about my selections for the 52 Book Club's 2022 Reading Challenge. Every year, the 52 Book Club puts out a reading challenge, 52 books, it equals roughly one book a week. This is week 7, and I'm going to be talking about prompt number 5, a book with chapter titles. The book in question is Fairyland by Paul J. McAuley, and it was written in 1997. It's not an unremarkable book, but it's a book that's a little difficult to remark upon. Obviously, it's science fiction. It's cyberpunk with bleak future and stark language. It's biopunky with with genetic manipulation and body modification and icky things like that. The premise is that genetic manipulation has allowed the creation of these small blue humanoids called dolls, and they are servants and status symbols for the rich in a very unequal society, not unlike what we have today. Through the course of the book, the dolls are surgically manipulated, technologically manipulated, and molecularly changed up, and they become sentient, and they start adapting to their surroundings and enable themselves through the use of, bear with me, nanobotic hallucinogens to enthrall humans and create chaos. And the idea and the conceit of the book is that Fairyland in the cyberpunk future is much like fairy tales from the past of myth and folklore. And I thought that's really a neat connection to make. And to tie it back to the prompt for the reading challenge, the chapter titles are vague. Here's an example: Lost Children, The Beginning of a Great Adventure, The Wild Hunt. They're vague and archetypal, and I think that's I didn't really pay attention while I was reading the book. I generally don't. Specifically, I listen to a lot of audiobooks and don't ever pay attention to chapter titles. But once I started looking at that, I think they are meant to denote fairy tale names or fairy tale chapters, or harkening back to even the Grimm fairy tales, which I thought was an interesting choice, and I'm glad to have done the reading challenge so that I got that part of it. Other things that I liked about the book is that it's weird to read near future that is actually in the past, particularly when the time spans are thin. If you're reading 2001: A Space Odyssey or 1984 was written in roughly 1948, and 2001 was written in the mid-60s. So the time spans end up being 40 years or so. Fairyland, on the other hand, was written in 1997 and probably takes place, it doesn't ever actually say in the book, but it probably takes place roughly in 10, 15 years in the future. And so those slices of time are a little thinner. And that would still place the book in technically our past, and that it doesn't feel that way. It feels still in our future. So it's a difference in writing between writers from the 60s and 50s and 40s compared to the writers now, where they can write into the future a little bit differently or better. And I don't know, it's interesting to think about what causes that. Some things I didn't exactly care for. The narrative is always being affected by the setting, so there's a bit of tail-wagging dog aspect of the book that, as I understand, McAuley uses in other books as well. And I can see where that's appealing because it allows for a lot of world building, but it also ends up making a lot of the action take place off camera, if we were talking about a movie or a television show. What that forces McAuley to do is to write out other scenes and other characters and just bring them in midway and towards the end of the story, and so that creates a sprawling effect. Other authors I enjoy really do that well. Neal Stephenson does that great, but Neal Stephenson doesn't care about page count, and I think Paul McAuley was trying to wrap it up a little bit too quickly with Fairyland. Other aspects that I didn't care for too much was the biopunk aspect of it. I'm not a reader of those kinds of books. Biopunk and genetic modification and body modification give me the willies, and I generally don't seek those out. The reason I did was because this is a very special collection of books called the Glance Future Classics. And I was very interested in this series. There's 8 of them, and that is really why I read Fairyland, was to start my journey with these. I'm not going to be able to finish all of them for the reading challenge, but I'm guessing at this point I'll be able to get to 4 or 5 of these Future Classics books. They're awesome. They have no name or any identifier on the front cover, and they all have these just wonderful covers. And it made me very interested to see what Glance in 2007 was calling a future classic. And that's it for me talking about Fairyland by Paul J. McAuley. This has been week 7 of Justin's 52 Books, and I was talking about Prompt 5, a book with chapter titles. For more information on the 52 Book Club's prompts, you can check them out at the52bookclub.com. You can also check them out on Facebook and Goodreads. You can check me out on Goodreads and Storygraph at Justin's 52 Books. And I hope to see you next week when I start talking about Prompt 28, a Jane Austen-inspired book. Happy reading. Additionally, one of the main issues I had with the book is that early on I missed that they had blue skin, so I had this mental image of them being the minions from those Despicable Me movies. And when they started turning menacing, it got this weird mental pictures